everyone, it's Misty from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I am really excited about this week's project. We are going to be making this really cute little ruffled zipper pouch. I love this. It's super easy to make, and all you need to make it are 2 fat quarters, a little bit of fusible fleece, or batting, and a 14-inch zipper to match. So my friends Barb and Mary from me and my sister were kind enough to let me teach you this little project. It's in their book, It Takes Two. And so they've written this book, and it's all these great projects that all take just 2 fat quarters, just like the project we're making today. And of course, in their honor, I am using this beautiful pedal power line that they have come up with. And I just picked out a few of my favorite fat quarters from this bundle. And of course, we have lots of other wonderful fat quarters available on our website as well, and I'm sure you guys have lots of them in your stash. So just grab 2 that you love, and let me show you how to do this. So first off, we're going to have an A fabric and a B fabric. The A fabric is going to be the outside of the bag, so that's what you're going to see most of. The B is going to be the inside of the bag and the ruffle, so keep that in mind. So for my fabric A, I'm going to use this really cute kind of geometric triangle print here, and I've already cut it down. I've cut my fat quarter down to 12 inches by 15 inches. And so you're going to need a rectangle out of both A and B that measures 12 by 15. So for the B fabric, remember that's our ruffle and our lining, we're also going to need to cut 2 2.5 by 16-inch strips, and those are what we're going to use to make our ruffle. So I have one that's 2.5 by the width of that fat quarter. So let me just go ahead and trim this down really quick. I'm on the 4, which means I need to come over to the 20 to trim that strips down. Okay, and so then now I can just set this aside, and this will be ready to make our ruffle in just a second. So to begin, let's go ahead and take that cute fabric that I selected for my A, and we're going to fuse it to this interfacing or fusible fleece, whatever you decide to use, just something to give it a little bit of body and stability. And so on products like this, there's typically a rough side or a bumpy side and then a smooth side. The bumpy side is where that adhesive is, and so you want to make sure that it is going towards the wrong side of your fabric. So that's what I've got here, and then we can take this over to the iron. Make sure I've got it covering all the little edges because we don't want any of that adhesive to get onto the iron. And we're just going to press with a nice hot iron until this is all fused. There we go. And you can kind of test it and make sure that all the edges are stuck. Oops, like I need a little bit more there. Just take your time and make sure it's all fused together. There we go, that seems nice now. And you can see that just gives it a little bit more body and will help the bag keep its shape. So now we're going to work on our ruffles. So what we want to begin with is, I like to use my little 2.5 by 8-inch ruler, and I'm going to grab some pins here. And we're going to put some little marks for reference. So if you have like a chalk pin or a micron pin, just little tiny marks, and these are all going to get hidden in the seam, so you don't have to worry about them showing. So I'm going to measure over 1 inch from the edge, and I'm going to make just a little dash, just right there, and I'm going to do that on the other side as well. 1 inch and make a little dash. And what these are is these are going to be reference points for me later when we go back to add our ruffle, but I can just take care of it now. So then I'm going to measure over from that first little mark that we made, and we're going to go over 5 more inches from the mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that should be right in the middle of the 2 marks that we made. And so I'm just going to put another mark there. So let's go ahead and repeat that on the other side, so you guys can see again. So I'm measuring over 1 inch from the edge, just a little dash, and then 5 inches from that mark, and a little dash, and then 1 inch from this side. And that's going to give us our placement for our ruffle when we get to that point. So then now to make our ruffles, remember we have that 2.5 by 16-inch strip. So now we're just going to go ahead and sew with that 1/4-inch seam. And if you want to back stitch, you can do that at the start and stop just to make sure that this is nice and sturdy. And then we'll turn around and do that same thing on the other side. So just pinching that, making sure it's all lined up. And then 1/4-inch seam. There we go. All right, so now that's really quick and easy to just turn and press out those little edges. You can use, the back side of a pin if you want, or if you've got a purple thing or a chopstick, just to make sure those points are nice and sharp. There we go, and now we can press this in half. All the way down. And our ends are going to be turned under, just like so. All right, and I have the other one of these already made. And so now, remember we made those marks on the outside of our fabric, and those are our reference points for where we want to start what is going to be our ruffle. So our little finished ends are going to line up on either side where those outside marks are. So we'll put a pin there and a pin there. And then I kind of like to take my fabric and just find the middle, just like that. And if you want to press it in half before you start to make sure, we can do that on this one so you can see how that would give you that reference point. Just give it a nice crease. And so then when you go to hold it up here, you'll be able to see that crease and know that's the middle, because that's the mark that we want to line up with that center dash that we did there. So we're also going to put a pin in there. And now we're going to pleat out from the middle in both directions. So it's kind of creating this little box here. It just overlaps just a little bit. And this is one of those instances where pins really are your friend. You just kind of want to take your time and pin these in place. If you have, binding clips, that could work too. You just want this to stay when we take it to the machine and not have to fight with it. So I'm just going to take some time and get all of this pinned down, and we're going to do the exact same process to the other side, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, side one is done. So remember, we're just going to flip that around and do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so we have finished pinning both sides. One thing I do want to point out is you want to make sure that you're doing the same number of pleats on both sides and that your ruffles pretty close to match on either sides of the bag here. So you can see I've made sure that I'm stepping out the same number of steps on each side so that all of that is going to be even and look great in the end. So now that we have this pinned in place to make it easy on us, we're just going to take this to the machine and we're going to use either an 1/8 inch or a scant 1/4 inch to hold our pleats in place. And just be sure to move those pins out of your way before you sew over them, because you never want to stitch over a pin. And I am going to back stitch at the start and the stop, just to make sure that I don't have to fight with it. So I've gone ahead and pulled out that first pin, and I'm going to just do a little back stitch and then stop as I get to that next pin and just pull them out and put them back in my pin cushion as I go. You just want to take your time with this. And again, we don't want to sew over those pins because we don't want a broken needle or a broken pin flying up and hitting us. It's important to stay safe. Here we go. Okay, we've made it across that first side, and you can see it's just a very narrow 1/8 inch that I've stitched there just to hold my ruffle in place for me so I don't have to worry about those pins anymore. And then we're going to turn it around and do the exact same thing on the other side. So remember, a little bit of back stitch at the beginning, and then slide those pins out and just sail down. Okay, both of our ruffles are attached there, and so now we can choose our zipper. I think I'm going to use this pink one, and we are ready to start attaching it as well as our lining layer. So I want to make sure and note that I've left both ends, both the stoppers that come with the zipper, I'm keeping those attached. I'm not pre-trimming this or anything like that, and I'm going to go ahead and unzip it. And I'm going to lay this so that it hangs over about 2 inches or 1.5 inches on either side of my project so that the end of the zipper head and the stopper are completely out of my way. And then I am going to sandwich it right sides together with my lining fabric. And so we're going to keep those pins handy. We're going to use those again, because we do have a lot of layers that we're working with. And so I'm just going to start right here on this end and work my way down to make sure everything is going to stay lined up right where I want it. So I put one pin in there, and we're just going to make our way down. Put a pin every few inches, because of those pleats, we are dealing with some thickness here, so you just want to make sure everything's going to stay where you want, and we don't end up with a lot of shifting. There we go. I'm just checking, making sure my zipper's lined up, as well as my lining fabric, that all of those ends are matching up. There we go. And then because sometimes when you're dealing with this thickness of fabric, you kind of get a little bit of tugging on a piece of fabric. And so I was noticing that. So I'm going to go ahead now and jump to the other end of this and just put a pin to make sure that everything is going to lay smooth and end up even at the end there. So this opposite side, I can just go ahead and pin in place so that I don't end up tugging too much of this lining fabric by just pinning from one side to the other. There we go. Just put a few more here, and I think we'll be ready to go. And one more. There we go. All right, so again, we're going to take this to the machine, and now remember we used that really scant 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch when we were attaching the ruffle. We're going to use a true 1/4 inch now to attach these layers together. And because we have plenty of room here on our zipper, if we just line up a 1/4 inch from that edge, we're not going to catch the teeth in the needle. And just make sure that we pull these pins out of the way as we go. So let's go ahead and stitch this first side. Slide that pin out and cruise all the way down. Just take your time, because remember, you are working with a lot of layers with that ruffle under there. And so now, before I go any farther, I like to check and make sure I've got everything caught. My zipper is caught there, and my lining looks nice. Nothing's peeking through, so that looks great. So now that we've got that first side attached, you can see what we're aiming for. We're going to use that same idea, but we need to pull this around to the other side. And so we just want to make sure that everything's going to line up. And again, we're going to have that little bit of overhang. You just want it to be the same amount as before so that our zipper will line up right. And the teeth are pointed in towards the ruffle. And then we're going to take our lining fabric and sandwich this again, just like we did on the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin this and get this side stitched down, and I'll meet you back here when it's done. Okay, I've got my zipper all sandwiched in here, and let's go ahead and turn this out so we can check both of those sides. Remember, we looked at our zipper on the other side first. We're just going to check and make sure we don't have anything that got missed. It all looks really, really nice. Awesome. Okay, so now that that is ready to go, we can go ahead and move our zipper head in towards the center, just like that. Make sure it's all zipping nicely. It looks great, and you can see how that little ruffle is going to peek up over there. Isn't that so cute? And then we're going to unzip this a little bit, and we're going to turn this back so that our lining is on the outside. Actually, we're going to unzip this. I almost forgot a step. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. We're going to unzip this a little bit before we trim it, and we're going to give this a nice press on each side. And because you have that, zipper partway in there, it can kind of be a little bit to work with, but you just want to get the fabric to lay down away from the zipper, and we're going to come back and top stitch that to give it a nice finished edge on both sides. So I'm going to press it from the inside and the outside just to make sure that my ruffle is going to have the attention it deserves, and our other fabric isn't cutting into that at all. So we'll do the same thing on the other side here. Sometimes if you use the corner of your table like I'm using here, it helps to kind of get that zipper to let it all lay down the way that you want. Slide it into your ironing board if you're using a regular ironing board. But that's looking nice. All right, and so now that I've done that, I can just come back and just top stitch straight along this edge here with 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch, whatever works for you, all the way along this straight side on both sides of the zipper. There's the first side. We'll come around and do the other. And these little details like this just really give such a nice finished look to a handmade project, which is what we all want, right? We want beautiful things that people will want to use. Ta-da! Awesome. And now we don't have to worry about the fabric rolling into where the zipper needs to go anymore. And so we're just going to go ahead and slide that zipper about halfway. And we can now trim off our excess zippers. But again, you want to make sure your zipper's in the middle before you trim it, because you're going to be so sad if you cut off the head of that zipper when you're not thinking of it. All right, so now I've just got my ruler. I'm going to just lay this on the end with my rotary cutter, trim off that edge, turn it around and do the same thing on the other side. There we go. There we go. Straighten that all out. Okay, so now I thought this was a really fun way to get this cute little boxed method on the side. you're going to keep it exactly like this. And what we're going to do, you want to make sure that your zipper is, you know, exactly in half. And I just eyeballed this and it worked totally fine. The exact measurements are in the pattern that you can check out. But you just want to make sure your zipper is running right down the middle. And then give it a nice good, you know, press it with your hands. You can press it with an iron if you want. And we're just going to tuck that point in to the zipper, creating kind of this fold on the side here, just like that. And you don't want to overlap the zipper part, but you just kind of want to create that little crease. So I think that looks really nice. Make sure my zipper will still lay flat, and then I'm going to put some pins in there just to hold it down. One on either side, and then we can turn around and do the same thing on the other side. We're just going to use that. Here's our flat edge. We're going to take that point and tuck it in and squeeze this so that our zipper stays in the center. And if you need to adjust it, you can totally go back and do that. One of the other great things about this design that me and my sister did is by moving that ruffle in, when we go to stitch these edges, we don't have to worry about the ruffle getting in the way. And so I think that looks great. I'm just going to put a couple more pins on this side. There we go. Get that ruffle to be inside so I can make sure my zipper is going to be nice and straight. That's really the only trick. And then a pin on this side. There we go. So I think that looks really nice. And now we are going to sew. I used a very generous 1/4 inch on either side here. And then I back stitched quite a bit at the start and stop, and then also over the zipper, because those are all places that you're going to get some tension as you're using this little bag. So we're just going to take it and sew on either side. Back stitch a few times, come to the zipper, back stitch again to the other side, and back stitch. And then we can turn it and do that same thing. There we go. All right, so now we can take those pins out. And this great little zipper pouch is pretty much done. So if you wanted to bind this little edge so you don't have any raw edges, this would be the step. You would just attach a normal binding. You could also do, like if you have a serger or an overlock stitch on your machine, you could just go over these little edges to hide in all those raw seams so you have a nice finished edge. And then we can just turn this right sides out by pushing it through our little opening. And it creates this great little box, just like that. And we've got this great little zipper pouch. Isn't that so fun? So quick and easy. I love the little attention to detail by adding this ruffle. It'd be great to add a little charm or something to the zipper pull, since sometimes it's hard to find there under the ruffle. But I just think these are so great and would be perfect little gifts to fill with all kinds of fun goodies. So thanks again to my friends Barb and Mary at Me and My Sister for letting me share this great pattern out of their book, It Takes Two, full of tons of fun projects using just 2 fat quarters. So I love that. We all have fat quarters in our stash that we're looking for great ways to use up. So it's a great addition to your sewing room to inspire you with lots of fun ideas. So I hope you guys have a fabulous week, and I will see you so soon. Have a great one. Bye.